The Razer Phone 2 is a pretty simple name for a fairly interesting phone with a lot of fascinating upgrades that even is getting the Apple sheep a little bit excited. And this is probably not the video you expected from me today, but I really want you guys to know that this interests me. So here we are. So yeah, watching the Razer Phone 2 event was really not what I expected to do tonight, but we needed to do our Twitch stream of the day. I wasn't really sure what we were going to talk about. Someone asked me, do you want to react to the Razer event? And I was like, I'm not really a fan of much of what Razer makes. I thought the Razer phone was okay, just a little bit too high priced, missing out on a lot of current features of today. But I humored it and said, you know what? We've never reacted to a Razer event before. I don't really know how these things go. Could be really cringy, could be kind of fun. Who knows? So I reacted to the event with you guys. Luckily, a lot of you showed up and watched it with me, which was fun. Probably a lot of you who'd never watched Razer events before. They were very chill, I think, is how I need to sum it up. It's just, everyone's kind of relaxed. The CEO's kind of funny. He's making jokes about the phone as he's releasing it. But anyway, what interests me about the Razer Phone 2 is that it's quite a decent upgrade. So from the front, not much has changed, but don't get used to the front of phones changing very much, because for the next couple of years, not much of the front of the phone is going to change very drastically. So that's not how I review it. But the speakers on the front are much, much louder, and they even brought up that many phones this year, that shall remain nameless, but it was very clear it was the Pixel 3, have front-facing stereo speakers, but they are channeled audio, which is not as good as actually having the speakers. So Razer is standing their ground and saying, we don't really care about the bezel-less trend, we just want to be an ergonomic gaming phone, so we're gonna have good use and use all the advantages we get for having a forehead and a chin. They literally have a part of the keynote where they're like, there's no notch, we have big bezels, and we know it. And I kind of like that. You know, there's some design trends that I'm not a fan of. Like, I don't think the Razer phone looks better than an iPhone, but I respect the company for sticking to their guns, being self-confident about what they're releasing, and not trying to be something they're not. Not trying to constantly be comparing themselves to iPhones. In fact, when they brought out their Geekbench scores for the Razer Phone 2, they pretended that the iPhone didn't exist. But in comparison to all other Android phones, because of their vapor cooling system that they have in the Razer Phone 2, which with higher priced phones is actually becoming quite normal in order to set apart your processing speed and GPU from the competition, you have a vapor cooling system, and then you can get the Snapdragon 845 a lot faster than the competition. And they're claiming it's even faster than the OnePlus 6, which was the previous record holder when it came to Geekbench tests. So overall processing speed, while it may not match that of an iPhone, is the highest for a Snapdragon we've ever seen, which I thought was impressive. They're adding things that I thought were crucially needed last year. Things like wireless charging and, of course, water resistance, which I think should be standard in most smartphones that come out today. They were a little bit behind on that, but this year they caught up. So they have a glass back finish as well as a matte black finish that is still glass. So you still get the wireless charging and whatnot, but it's just not as glossy if you're not a fan of the fingerprint design. But the speakers on the front, they did mention, are much, much louder than before. They were able to break 100 decibels when comparing smartphone speakers between the Pixel 2, the iPhone 10. Obviously, they don't have the Pixel 3 yet, but I imagine that since the volume and the speakers are not channeled, they're able to get some pretty decent audio quality out of this. Now, Razer was known for having a pretty crappy dual camera last year. Even MKBHD, who they referenced in this keynote, which I thought was interesting, that MKBHD was literally being brought up in the keynote, and they were like, we got the best battery life award from MKBHD, but they probably didn't want to talk about the fact that Marquez did not like their camera very much, but it was kind of an afterthought. It was kind of thrown in there. This year, they're updating it so that image quality should be much, much better. The bokeh effects, the portrait mode they've added is supposedly much, much better. I'm sure it doesn't compete to a Pixel or an iPhone camera, but it's at least an upgrade. And I'm thankful that they compared their camera to last year's model and not an iPhone XS by turning down the contrast ratio all the way and making the picture look dark when whipping out a XS and just taking a picture wouldn't actually look like that. No, they just wanted to talk about them and their phones and how they've upgraded. It looks much better. I'm sure it's no flagship killer when it comes to smartphone camera quality, but still an upgrade nonetheless. It's something they're addressing that they knew people were complaining about. They're still able to pack a 4,000 milliamp hour battery with a 120 hertz display, which, as they mentioned during their keynote, that's kind of their trademark unique thing. No other smartphone truly has been able to get a 120 hertz refresh rate, which I thought was funny because they don't ship it like that out of the box. You have to toggle it on in the settings. But speaking of Android, they've stated that they don't really care that much about bloatware. There's a couple of apps they've added that help with organizing your games and customizing performance and stuff like that. But for the most part, it should be running stock Android, and it shouldn't be coated with Samsung skins or tons of of bloatware. They actually made an effort to say during the keynote, we do not put bloatware on your devices so that we can sell your data to other companies and stuff like that. So really happy that they took the time to mention that. And I just want to take the time and mention that I love the presenter of this keynote. That guy was hilarious. They had plenty of jokes throughout the keynote, like, we have a beauty mode in the Razer Phone 2, which is important because I got Tinder dates to swipe. I'm very lonely, okay? So just lay off the beauty mode hate. It was just funny. It was clever. Also, he gets through talking about all the different specs and all the different features they have. Of course, fast charging. And then he says, and I think that's everything. And he clicks the PowerPoint slider and it moves over and says, but that's not all. And he's like, oh yeah, wait, we got one more thing. And usually see when companies make mistakes during presentations, it's really cringy and it's really awkward. But somehow this guy was able to make it look completely natural and completely normal. And he had like 0% stress. He was like 100% confident in everything he was saying. And I just kind of love that in a presenter. I should be excited and eager to hear what this presenter has to say. If I'm watching a keynote, I shouldn't be worried for the presenter, which happened several times during the Pixel event. I was kind of like, oh no, why do you gotta say it like, oh no. This guy was just like, here's the phone. But anyway, he clicks the clicker thing. It says, that's not all. And he turns around and he's like, oh yeah, one more thing. And they show off the back of the phone, which is an RGB glowing logo, which ordinarily I wouldn't care about. It was just something that it's like, Razer, that's your trademark thing, your RGB stuff. How can you not have that on the phone? Luckily, they actually have it built into the phone and it gets even more interesting. Before, I would have thought, oh, that's just kind of the cherry on the top. It's just, it's color aesthetic. It's just kind of bright. It looks cool, whatever. But it's actually a little bit better than that. They found a way to make their logo in the color functional on the back so that now if you get a notification from Facebook, their logo will turn blue. If you get a notification from Snapchat, it'll turn yellow, and it's all customizable. So if you want certain apps to change the logo certain colors, that means the phone could be face down and light up different ways depending on what notifications you have waiting for you. So that's definitely a lot more clever, a lot more interesting than just adding a glowing logo on the back, which is totally what they could have done. But no, it sounds like they partnered with Everything Apple Pro on making sure that glowing logo was perfect. That's a lie. They didn't actually. It's just a joke. But still, all of these features packed into a 2018 smartphone seemed very, very interesting because, like I said, they're trying to do their own thing. They're not trying to just make an exact template carbon cut copy of an iPhone and say, our phone can do everything an iPhone can, plus more. Here's what an iPhone sucks. Instead, they're just like, okay, iPhones can do their own thing. Here's what we're good at, though. We have the highest refresh rate of any smartphone out there, which to some people is extremely noticeable. We have a huge battery. We're getting better cameras. Now we have IP67 water resistance, wireless charging. Looks like Razer's making their own wireless chargers now as well, so maybe that'll be interesting. And to top it all off, you know, I really did not expect to be very interested in this keynote at all. I was watching it and I was like, oh, they're just gonna talk about some gaming stuff that's coming out, and then I'm not gonna care that much because I don't do much gaming on laptops or on Windows anymore. But no, actually, after announcing all the things they did, after saying all the cool features the Razer Phone 2 had, they topped it all off with the $800 starting price, which was way more reasonable and way more affordable than I thought this keynote was going to handle the price. I figured that they were gonna add all these features like the new Snapdragon and the new performance and the new features, and then say, and it's $1,000 because smartphones are $1,000 these days. And if you want to be flagship, you gotta be $1,000. But instead they said, no, you'll actually save money by going with this phone over a Note or over a Pixel, because the Pixel 3 starting price is $800. $799, which you can now get with all of these new features on the Razer Phone 2. Near stock Android experience, but I imagine comparing to the Pixel, it's probably no competition when it comes to the camera, but when it comes to overall hardware performance and the display, I think the Razer Phone is gonna kill the Pixel, even when it comes to the speakers. And overall, I just personally think, as an Apple sheep, the Razer Phone is worth way more for your money. Obviously, worth is subjective, so it changes for person to person, but they also announced the pre-orders are at midnight tonight, so very sudden, just kind of dropped on us, and I'm tempted. I'm interested. Maybe I'll get it and not keep it, but I at least want to try it out and just take a look at this thing, because if you're able to release an Android phone in 2018 and still able to get the Apple sheep a little bit invested and a little bit excited, I think that says something about your phone, and I kind of want this phone to do well. So that's everything that happened. It probably wasn't what you were expecting to watch tonight on Tailosive Tech, but yeah, this might be the first Razer product I ever actually try myself. Overall, it just seems like decent hardware for a fairly affordable price. So let me know what you guys think of the Razer Phone 2. Am I over-exaggerating its goodness, or is the Pixel 3 way better for your money? All that good stuff. Let me know in the comments below. This is your Apple Sheep here. I'll see you in the next one.